Tonight, we begin a long journey into a world shrouded in mystery. A world where the boundaries between myth and forgotten history blur. A story that many believe was deliberately hidden, erased from our books, and buried under centuries of rewritten narratives. This is the story of Tartaria, a supposed civilization that, according to some researchers and enthusiasts, once stretched across vast lands, leaving behind silent monuments, unexplained technologies, and echoes of a forgotten golden age. Close your eyes, if you like, and imagine a great empire. Not one of Rome or Greece, not of Egypt or Babylon, but a different civilization, spanning across the endless steppes of Eurasia, covering regions we now know as Russia, Central Asia, parts of Siberia, and even stretching its influence toward Europe and beyond. This was Tartaria, or so the maps of old suggest. The very word itself, Tartaria, feels almost mythical. It whispers of something grand and ancient, but also mysterious and half-forgotten. In the dusty corners of libraries, in the faint markings of centuries-old maps, the word still lingers. On some maps drawn by European explorers in the 16th, 17th, and even 18th centuries, large regions across northern Asia are labeled simply as Tartaria. A vast, sprawling name, covering more land than many of the so-called great empires we learn about in school. But who were the Tartarians? Why do we hear so little about them? Why is there almost nothing in our official history books beyond vague references to nomads or tribes? This is where the mystery begins, and why so many today believe that Tartaria represents not just a forgotten land, but a deliberate cover-up, perhaps the greatest in human history. To understand this story, we must begin with the evidence, faint traces scattered like breadcrumbs across time. Old maps, strange architecture, unexplained technologies, and tales of catastrophes that might have reset the world. Each piece seems small on its own, but when put together, a picture begins to emerge, a picture of a lost civilization, one with knowledge and mastery far beyond what we are told. Let us start with the maps. In the age of exploration, European cartographers often filled in their maps with information that came from travelers, traders, or sometimes even pure speculation. And yet, many of these maps consistently showed a land called Tartaria. It was not a tiny province or a forgotten kingdom. It was massive, stretching across the heart of Asia. Sometimes it was divided into regions: Great Tartary, Little Tartary, Chinese Tartary, Independent Tartary. These divisions suggest a complex and organized society, not just empty land. Some argue that the name Tartaria was simply a label for lands Europeans did not fully understand, that it was a blanket term for unknown tribes. But others ask, why would such a name appear consistently for centuries, across so many maps, if it did not mean something real? Why would vast cities, trade routes, and even rivers be marked under the banner of Tartaria? And then, there is the architecture. In cities across Russia, Central Asia, and even parts of Europe, stand grand buildings, cathedrals, government halls, railway stations, palaces, whose design seems strangely advanced for the time they were supposedly built. Enormous arches, massive domes, intricate stonework, and a sense of scale that feels almost out of place. Some claim these buildings were not the creations of the societies credited with them, but instead remnants of Tartaria's advanced architecture. The style, often called Greco-Roman or classical, suddenly appears in places far from Greece or Rome. Could it be that these were not imitations, but survivals, echoes of a lost world whose architectural knowledge was far greater than we are told? Then there are the tales of energy. Many enthusiasts of Tartarian theory point to old photographs showing towers, spires, and strange metal devices atop buildings. They ask, were these merely decorative? Or could they have once been part of an advanced system, perhaps a form of wireless energy distribution, long before Nikola Tesla made his famous experiments? It is easy to dismiss these ideas as fantasy, and yet the questions linger. Why do so many old structures seem overbuilt, as if designed for purposes we no longer understand? Why do they so often resemble each other across distant lands, as if guided by a single culture or shared knowledge? But perhaps the most haunting clue of all comes not from what remains, but from what is missing. The sudden disappearance of Tartaria from history books. The way the name simply fades from maps in the 19th century. By the time the 20th century began, Tartaria was gone, erased, replaced by new national borders, rewritten narratives, and a silence that feels intentional. Some say this was because Tartaria never truly existed. Others whisper that it did, and that it was deliberately removed, destroyed by those who sought to control the story of human history. For what reason? Power, authority, control over the past, and therefore control over the future. As we begin this long exploration, I invite you to simply listen, imagine, and drift with the story. For whether Tartaria was real or myth, history or legend, its echoes still touch us. And perhaps, in the quiet hours of the night, we may glimpse truths that the daylight hides. Tonight, we walk into the forgotten lands of Tartaria. A journey through maps, monuments, mysteries, and whispers of a cover-up so vast, it might reshape how we see human history itself. As we move deeper into the mystery of Tartaria, let us focus our attention on one of the most compelling sources of evidence: the maps. Old maps have always been windows into how our ancestors understood the world. They reveal not only geography, but also the limits of knowledge, the influence of politics, and sometimes the imagination of explorers. And yet, when it comes to Tartaria, these maps do something more. They whisper of a vast empire that official history now pretends never existed. Picture yourself unrolling a centuries-old parchment, the ink faded, the paper yellowed with age. Across Europe, Africa, and Asia, the outlines of continents appear, though imperfectly drawn. But as your eyes wander eastward, past the familiar borders of Europe and into the lands beyond the Ural Mountains, something extraordinary takes shape. There, stretching across immense distances, lies a name written boldly: Tartaria. This was not a tiny province lost in obscurity. It was a massive expanse, covering Siberia, Central Asia, and sometimes even northern parts of China. On many maps, it was the single largest region, occupying a space so vast that it dwarfed the empires we usually learn about: the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, or even Imperial China. And yet, today, we are told Tartaria was never an empire at all. How can that be? Cartographers of the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries labeled these lands in surprising detail. Some maps speak of Great Tartary, stretching across the frozen north. Others mention Little Tartary, near the Black Sea. Still others describe Chinese Tartary, close to the Great Wall, or independent Tartary, suggesting lands not under the rule of neighboring empires. The mere fact that these subdivisions existed hints at a society complex enough to be recognized as distinct political entities. Critics argue that these maps were simply products of European ignorance, that Tartaria was a generic label used for people they did not understand, perhaps nomadic tribes that roamed the steppes. And yes, in part, this may be true. But if it were only ignorance, why did the name persist so consistently across hundreds of maps and for centuries? Why was Tartaria treated as an organized realm, not just empty wilderness? As we linger on these maps, another question arises. What happened to Tartaria? Why does it disappear so suddenly? One moment, it is the dominant name across Asia. Then, as the 19th century unfolds, the word begins to fade. The regions once marked Tartaria are absorbed into the Russian Empire, China, and other emerging nations. By the dawn of the 20th century, the name is gone, erased almost completely. To some, this is merely the progress of cartography, the refinement of knowledge. But to others, it feels like something more deliberate. As if an entire chapter of history was intentionally closed, hidden, and overwritten. Now, let us imagine what these lands were like. Imagine vast cities rising from the steppes, hubs of trade and culture, their spires catching the sun. Imagine caravans of merchants moving along roads that stretched for thousands of miles, linking Europe to Asia, carrying silk, spices, metals, and knowledge. For centuries, the Silk Road connected distant civilizations, and much of that road passed through what was once called Tartaria. Could it be that this empire was not merely a blank space, but a vital link in the global network of the ancient world? Even the names of some modern cities suggest a deeper past. Many towns in Siberia and Central Asia have foundations older than we are told, and their architecture hints at a more sophisticated history. Grand stone buildings, intricate designs, and the ruins of fortresses stand as silent witnesses. Who built them, and why do they feel older than their official dates suggest? Some researchers believe that European explorers, when they encountered these lands, did not stumble upon primitive tribes, but instead saw the remnants of a once great civilization. A civilization already in decline, already fractured by catastrophe or conflict, but still echoing the power it once held. And then, there are the forgotten legends. Folk tales speak of kings and warriors from the north, of empires lost to floods and fire, of golden ages that ended in sudden destruction. The stories of Tartaria, though fragmented, fit into a larger pattern that appears in cultures around the world. Stories of a great civilization destroyed in a cataclysm, wiped from memory except for scattered ruins and whispered myths. One of the most intriguing theories about Tartaria is that it may not have simply declined slowly, like Rome or Greece, but instead was destroyed suddenly, violently, and perhaps even deliberately. Some suggest massive floods. Others point to mud, to layers of soil and clay that seem to cover entire first floors of old buildings in cities across Russia and Europe. Could there have been a worldwide catastrophe in the 18th or 19th century that buried much of Tartaria beneath mud and debris, erasing its presence in a matter of years? As strange as this sounds, the evidence is visible even today. Walk through the old districts of St. Petersburg, Moscow, or Kazan, and you will notice buildings where windows and doors appear half buried beneath the ground. Entire levels seem swallowed by the earth. Official explanations speak of changes in street levels, of reconstruction, of architectural quirks. But some believe these are signs of a global event, a flood of mud that swept across continents and swallowed cities whole. If such an event occurred, it would explain much. It would explain why Tartaria vanished from maps, why so many of its supposed monuments were suddenly buried, why new powers rose to fill the vacuum. It would also explain why history seems to have been rewritten so forcefully in the 19th century, as if to cover the tracks of what truly happened. The maps, then, are more than curiosities. They are windows into a forgotten possibility. They suggest that Tartaria was once recognized, once acknowledged, and then erased. They invite us to question, what else has been hidden from us? What else lies beneath our feet, or beneath the words of our history books? As we drift further into this story, we must remember, the truth may be stranger than we imagine. For history is not always written by the victors. Sometimes, it is rewritten by those who wish to control the narrative, to decide what we remember and what we forget. And so, with the maps of Tartaria as our guide, let us continue forward, deeper into the ruins, legends, and silent monuments of a world that may have been far greater, and far stranger, than the history we are told. As we leave behind the maps and step into the physical remnants of Tartaria, we encounter the silent testimony of its buildings and monuments. Unlike maps, which can be dismissed as mistakes, architecture carries a weight of reality. Stones, bricks, arches, and domes speak through their scale, design, and enduring presence. And when we examine these structures across Russia, Europe, and Asia, we find something remarkable, evidence of a civilization far more advanced than mainstream history allows. Imagine the streets of St. Petersburg. Officially founded in the early 18th century by Peter the Great, history presents it as a symbol of Russia's modernization. Built on swamps and marshlands, the city supposedly rose quickly, constructed by thousands of workers and guided by European architects. But when we look closely, questions arise. How could such monumental buildings, grand palaces, enormous cathedrals, wide government halls, appear almost overnight? How could a society with no prior experience in large-scale stone construction achieve this? Some researchers suggest St. Petersburg, and other cities like it, were not built from scratch but rebuilt over pre-existing structures, remnants of Tartaria. Perhaps Peter the Great's construction was a reimagining of a pre-existing urban landscape, and history simply forgot the original builders. This idea gains weight when we study the architectural style. Domes, spires, arches, and intricate facades repeat across distant regions, from Moscow to Siberia, and even into Central Asia. Why does this advanced style appear so consistently in places supposedly isolated and underdeveloped? Even more puzzling are the foundations. Many buildings appear partially buried, with doors and windows half below street level. Entire floors seem swallowed by the earth. Some explain this as changes in urban planning, but others point to a more dramatic theory, the so-called mud flood. According to this idea, a massive catastrophe in the 18th or 19th century swept cities with mud and debris, burying lower floors and altering the landscape almost overnight. Old photographs from the 19th century show grand buildings standing alone on empty streets. Who built these massive constructions, and why were they so advanced compared to the surrounding society? Some suggest these were Tartarian structures, misunderstood or misattributed by later historians. Attention also falls on peculiar details. Many buildings feature spires and metallic ornaments atop domes. Traditionally considered decorative, these could have served another purpose. Could they have been part of an energy system, channeling atmospheric electricity in ways we no longer understand? Tesla's experiments in wireless energy transmission in the late 19th century hint that such knowledge might have existed long before him. Tartaria's architecture may have been not only artistic but functional, integrating power, technology, and design. Even distant regions show surprising uniformity. Star-shaped forts appear across Europe, Asia, and the Americas, with precise angles and geometry. Official history labels them military structures, but some suggest they may have been part of a wider energy network. If Tartaria was indeed a civilization with free energy and advanced technology, it challenges the narrative of scarcity and centralized power that dominates modern history. Such knowledge could explain why the empire might have been erased, buried under layers of soil and rewritten in books. The buildings remain, silent and misunderstood. Their spires reach toward the sky, their buried windows peer into the earth, and their scale defies simple explanation. As we walk past them today, it is worth asking, who truly built these marvels, and what knowledge did they once hold? In the quiet of the night, as we imagine the past, the stones of Tartaria whisper hints of a forgotten world, waiting to be remembered. As we drift deeper into the story of Tartaria, one of the most mysterious aspects is its sudden disappearance. One moment, this vast civilization is marked clearly on maps and acknowledged in records. The next, it vanishes almost entirely, replaced by the emerging nations we know today. What could have caused such a disappearance? Many researchers point to a phenomenon they call the mud flood. Imagine a world where cities, once thriving, are suddenly buried under layers of earth and debris. Streets rise. Lower floors disappear beneath mud. Windows and doors are swallowed by the ground. Entire neighborhoods are suddenly hidden from view. This is not gradual erosion over centuries. This is a sudden, violent event that leaves traces still visible today. Old photographs of cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kazan, and even some towns in the United States show buildings with buried floors. Some structures appear half-buried, with steps leading down into the ground. Others have windows that open into what should be lower stories but instead face walls of earth. The phenomenon is too consistent and widespread to be explained purely by urban development or reconstruction. The mud flood theory suggests that in the 18th or 19th century, a massive disaster, perhaps a series of floods, earthquakes, or even deliberate human intervention, swept across continents. Cities were buried, populations displaced, and the architecture of a once great civilization hidden beneath layers of mud. What remained on the surface was either rebuilt or replaced by new constructions. Over time, history was rewritten, and Tartaria faded from memory. Some theorists go even further, proposing that Tartaria had achieved technological mastery, including advanced engineering and even energy systems. These systems, embedded into their architecture, may have been lost or destroyed during the catastrophe. Spires and domes, once functional components, were reduced to decorative elements or misunderstood entirely. The sudden destruction of infrastructure could explain why knowledge of such technologies was lost, leaving only remnants that modern observers find puzzling. We can see echoes of this catastrophe in folklore and legends. Stories of floods, sudden destruction, and lost golden ages are common around the world. From Siberian legends of sunken cities to European tales of great floods that reshaped towns, these myths may contain kernels of historical truth. Tartaria, if it existed, might have been the epicenter of such a global event. Further evidence is found in architecture that seems disproportionate to its surroundings. Towers rise far taller than would be needed for ordinary buildings. Forts and palaces exhibit advanced geometrical layouts. Roads and bridges, often over-engineered for their apparent use, hint at a society capable of handling massive logistical and technological challenges. If Tartaria was destroyed, much of this knowledge would have been lost, buried under centuries of reconstruction. Even maps provide hints of catastrophe. Compare maps from the early 18th century with those from the mid-19th century. Tartaria disappears, borders are redrawn, and new nations appear almost overnight. Could this be the result of natural disaster alone? Or was there a deliberate effort to rewrite history, filling in gaps left by a buried empire? Some researchers suggest a combination of both. A sudden global-scale disaster could have devastated the infrastructure, while emerging powers, eager to control history and knowledge, might have deliberately erased Tartaria from records. The result is a civilization almost entirely forgotten, surviving only in fragments. Old maps, mysterious architecture, and whispered legends. Imagine, for a moment, walking through a city where the streets are silent, and buildings rise above mud and debris. The lower floors are hidden. Steps lead down into nothing. Windows look into walls. This is the scene some theorists reconstruct for Tartarian cities after the mud flood, a world half buried, half forgotten, waiting to be remembered. The idea of a mud flood is controversial, certainly. Mainstream historians dismiss it as a fanciful theory. But the evidence, when viewed carefully, raises questions that are difficult to ignore. Why are so many old buildings partially buried? Why do some streets rise inexplicably above older structures? Why did a civilization that once spanned continents disappear almost without a trace? As we continue our journey, it is worth keeping these questions in mind. The mud flood, whether literal or symbolic, represents a turning point. It marks the moment when Tartaria was lost, when a civilization of extraordinary knowledge, architecture, and culture was erased from the surface of the earth. And yet, its echoes remain, whispering through old stones, buried streets, and the faint traces left on maps. Tonight, as you listen, imagine the silent weight of these events. Imagine cities buried beneath mud, knowledge lost, and history rewritten. And know that even in the shadows of forgetfulness, the story of Tartaria continues to call to those who are willing to look beyond what they have been told. As the night deepens and we continue our journey through the forgotten world of Tartaria, we step beyond maps, architecture, and mud. Now, we enter the realm of legends and myths, the stories that whisper of a civilization both extraordinary and enigmatic. Folktales, old manuscripts, and oral traditions hint at knowledge and technologies far beyond what we are told existed, a knowledge that seems almost magical from our modern perspective. Across the vast lands once called Tartaria, countless tales survive, though often in fragments. In Siberia, storytellers speak of ancient cities that vanished beneath the earth, leaving only the spires of temples and towers visible above the soil. Travelers described palaces larger than any known today, with halls so vast that entire armies could march through them without obstruction. Local legends speak of kings with wisdom that rivaled the sages of Greece and China, men who understood the secrets of the natural world, harnessing energy in ways that astonished their contemporaries. In Central Asia, similar stories appear. Ancient texts recount civilizations whose artisans could carve stone with unimaginable precision, whose architects built structures designed not just for beauty or defense, but for function, perhaps as part of energy systems, or even as observatories aligned with celestial patterns. These tales speak of knowledge that was deliberately hidden, passed down only to a chosen few, while the broader population saw only the surface of life, unaware of the deeper sciences at play. Legends of Tartaria are not limited to Asia. In Europe, explorers reported encountering enormous structures that seemed out of place, often in areas supposedly sparsely populated. Fortresses with star-shaped layouts, enormous domes, and intricately patterned roads appear in historical records. Locals often called them lost cities or cities of giants, and their origin remained a mystery. Some historians dismiss these accounts as exaggerations, but taken together, they form a pattern, a memory of a civilization so advanced that it became almost mythic in the retelling. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Tartarian knowledge relates to energy. Certain photographs from the 19th century show buildings topped with towers, spires, and unusual metallic devices. Some theorists suggest these were not merely ornamental, but functional components of an advanced energy system, a way to harness atmospheric electricity, distribute it wirelessly, or power massive machinery. Could Tartaria have possessed a technology similar to the experiments of Nikola Tesla long before he was born? Could they have built cities where energy flowed freely, without fuel, wires, or combustion? We also find hints of advanced engineering in the way buildings were constructed. Some walls are made of massive bricks, far larger than those used in contemporary structures. Many doors and windows are unusually tall, accommodating forms of transportation or machinery now forgotten. Foundations are so perfectly laid that even centuries later, the structures stand without apparent support. Could this reflect a knowledge of materials and forces that was lost with the collapse of the civilization? Folklore often alludes to catastrophes that reshaped the world. Floods, fires, sudden disappearances, they echo across cultures from Asia to Europe. Could these tales be based on real events, the destruction of Tartaria and the burial of its cities beneath mud and debris? Could these stories explain why modern history seems so incomplete, why gaps exist in our understanding of architecture, technology, and the growth of nations in the 18th and 19th centuries? Some theorists even propose that Tartaria's technology extended beyond architecture and energy. They suggest advanced navigation systems, agricultural machines, and even forms of communication that were lost with the empire. Trade routes, roads, and bridges, often over-engineered, hint at an efficiency and knowledge of logistics far exceeding what we associate with the period. Perhaps Tartaria was a global hub of innovation, connecting distant regions in ways that modern historians cannot fully comprehend. Yet, with all this knowledge, Tartaria disappears. Was it destroyed by a natural catastrophe, buried under mud and debris, as some evidence suggests? Or was it deliberately erased, its knowledge confiscated, its buildings repurposed, its legacy hidden in plain sight? The answer remains uncertain. But the echoes of this lost civilization persist in stone, in legend, and in the curiosity of those willing to question the official narrative. As we listen quietly tonight, imagine the hidden cities of Tartaria, vast palaces half buried beneath the earth, towers that once carried energy across landscapes, and streets where the footsteps of a forgotten civilization still echo. Imagine the scholars, engineers, and artisans whose knowledge was so advanced that it defies understanding today. And imagine that all of this could have existed, and yet was deliberately forgotten, leaving only whispers for us to discover. In the end, Tartaria challenges our assumptions about history. It asks us to consider that perhaps much of what we believe is incomplete, shaped not only by the passage of time but by forces that sought to control the story. And so, as we drift further into sleep, let us carry the memory of this civilization with us, a civilization of wonders, secrets, and mysteries that may never be fully understood, but which continue to call across the centuries. As we journey further into the shadowed world of Tartaria, we come to one of the most compelling forms of evidence: the photographs, illustrations, and remnants of cities that still survive, waiting silently to be understood. These images, often overlooked or dismissed, reveal a civilization of extraordinary scale, precision, and perhaps even technology that predates the Industrial Revolution in ways that modern history struggles to explain. Consider old photographs from the 19th and early 20th centuries. Many of these show buildings with massive domes, towers, and spires, standing alone in vast, nearly empty streets. Some structures appear out of proportion to the societies supposedly living around them. Massive stone palaces, ornate public buildings, and intricate bridges stand as monuments to a knowledge that seems lost. In some cases, entire lower floors are buried, windows partially submerged beneath the ground, giving the impression that the earth itself had risen since their construction. These buried floors are not isolated incidents. They appear in Russia, Eastern Europe, and even parts of the Americas, suggesting a phenomenon both widespread and mysterious. The question arises: what caused it? Was it natural erosion, urban development, or a sudden cataclysm, such as the so-called mud flood? And if it was a catastrophe, what was its scope? Could it have buried cities across continents, erasing evidence of a civilization that once thrived? Beyond architecture, photographs reveal curious devices atop buildings: metallic towers, antenna-like spires, and unusual geometrical structures. Official history often describes them as decorative, but theorists suggest a different interpretation. Could these have been part of an energy system designed to harness atmospheric electricity and distribute it without wires? Could Tartaria have developed a network of free energy long before Nikola Tesla experimented with his Wardenclyffe Tower? The possibility is intriguing. Imagine cities designed not only for beauty and functionality, but also as nodes of a global energy grid. Towers and spires capturing electricity, feeding public buildings and machinery, while vast knowledge of engineering allowed for the construction of enormous, durable structures. Such a civilization would have been unparalleled in its time, combining aesthetics, science, and technology in ways we are only beginning to speculate about. Further evidence comes from old engineering and urban planning details. Roads and bridges are sometimes overbuilt, far exceeding what would have been necessary for the era. Forts and military structures show precise geometric layouts, often star-shaped, consistent across distant regions. Could this indicate a shared knowledge, a standard of engineering, or even technology used for purposes we cannot fully comprehend today? Trade routes and logistics hint at Tartaria's advanced organization. Roads spanning thousands of miles, connecting Europe to Asia, would have required careful planning and coordination. Caravans and merchants could move goods efficiently, suggesting a civilization with infrastructure and management sophisticated beyond contemporary claims. The scale and consistency of construction, from Siberia to Eastern Europe, implies not isolated tribes, but a unified knowledge system shared across vast distances. Photographs also reveal peculiar anomalies. In some towns, buildings appear to have windows blocked or bricked over, as if repurposed or modified after some event. Entire districts show architecture inconsistent with the supposed time of construction. Could this be evidence of reconstruction, censorship, or deliberate alteration? Were the original Tartarian structures covered, modified, or hidden to rewrite history? Maps, photographs, and architecture together paint a picture that is difficult to ignore. They suggest the existence of a civilization that mastered urban planning, construction, energy, and engineering on a scale that challenges conventional historical timelines. And yet, for reasons we can only speculate, Tartaria was erased from official accounts. Its buildings were reattributed, its knowledge buried, and its legacy obscured. Even the smallest details whisper of this lost knowledge. Ornate facades, carved symbols, and recurring architectural motifs hint at advanced understanding. Towers not only align with streets, but in some cases seem aligned with celestial patterns, suggesting knowledge of astronomy integrated into city planning. Could Tartaria have been not just an empire, but a civilization that blended science, spirituality, and technology into daily life? As we drift further into the story, imagine standing in a city where history has been rewritten. Buildings rise above streets, half buried, their original purpose forgotten. Towers once capable of harnessing energy now stand silent. Roads engineered with precision carry echoes of a lost civilization. And in the quiet, in the spaces between stones, the story of Tartaria still waits to be remembered. The photographs, maps, and architecture together form an invitation, a call to question, to explore, and to imagine a history far richer, more complex, and perhaps more extraordinary than the one we have been told. As we continue, keep this image in mind, a world of knowledge and power, hidden beneath mud and time, waiting for those who dare to see it. As we move deeper into the mystery of Tartaria, one of the most perplexing questions emerges. How could a civilization so vast, so advanced, simply vanish? Maps, architecture, photographs, and legends all point to a world that existed, yet official history has almost entirely erased it. This disappearance, sudden and profound, raises questions about natural catastrophe, deliberate destruction, and the rewriting of human memory. One of the primary theories centers on a massive global catastrophe. Historians and enthusiasts alike point to evidence of sudden mud floods, earthquakes, or climate events that could have buried cities and erased infrastructure. Photographs from the 19th century show buildings partially submerged beneath earth, streets that appear raised above old foundations, and windows and doors that lead only into walls of soil. Such evidence suggests that entire neighborhoods were affected simultaneously, implying an event of extraordinary scale. But natural disaster alone cannot explain everything. Even after centuries, the architectural sophistication and uniformity of these buildings remain, pointing to knowledge far beyond what we would expect in the regions they occupy. If Tartaria had been destroyed by a flood or earthquake, it seems likely that the memory of its civilization would have lingered more clearly. Yet, by the 19th century, the word Tartaria disappears from maps almost entirely, replaced by emerging nations, new borders, and rewritten histories. This leads to another, more controversial explanation: deliberate historical revision. Who would have an interest in erasing an entire civilization from memory? One possibility is that emerging empires and governments sought to consolidate power. Tartaria, with its advanced technology, free energy, and sprawling infrastructure, could have posed a threat to centralized authority. If knowledge of such a civilization survived, it could inspire rebellion, demand for independence, or challenge the control of resources. By rewriting history, the story of Tartaria could be hidden, its achievements attributed to other cultures or simply forgotten. Evidence for deliberate erasure is subtle but persistent. Architectural styles once widespread are suddenly reattributed in textbooks. Maps that once labeled regions as Tartaria are replaced with new borders and names. Old photographs of buildings are often dismissed as anomalies or misdated. Even historical events, such as floods, wars, or reconstructions, may have been framed in ways that obscure the underlying reality of a lost civilization. Some theorists suggest that Tartaria's destruction and erasure were part of a coordinated effort spanning continents. If Tartaria had technology capable of harnessing energy or advanced engineering, controlling this knowledge would be paramount. By burying cities, obscuring architecture, and rewriting history, powerful groups could suppress understanding of these technologies. What survives today? Partial maps, buried buildings, and scattered photographs are merely fragments of what was once a global civilization. Consider the consistency of architectural motifs across Europe, Asia, and even the Americas. Star-shaped forts, massive domes, intricate masonry, and precise geometrical layouts appear across regions supposedly unconnected. Could this reflect a shared knowledge system that persisted even after Tartaria's disappearance? If so, the erasure of history was not complete. Traces remain, waiting for careful observation to reveal a story hidden beneath layers of soil and centuries of misinformation. Legends and folklore further support the idea of intentional concealment. Tales of sunken cities, great floods, and civilizations erased from memory echo across cultures. Could these stories be the collective memory of an event so cataclysmic that it reshaped society? Could they reflect awareness of a civilization deliberately removed from the historical record? Tartaria may not only have disappeared physically but also intellectually, its knowledge hidden from future generations. The consequences of such erasure are profound. By controlling the narrative, those who survived could reshape society's understanding of progress, technology, and human capability. Entire fields of knowledge could be lost, leaving us with incomplete histories and unanswered questions. And yet, in scattered photographs, old maps, and the very stones of buried cities, the memory of Tartaria persists, quietly challenging the story we have been told. As we contemplate this lost world, it is worth reflecting on what it means for our understanding of history. If Tartaria existed, if it was advanced, and if it was deliberately hidden, then much of what we believe about the past may be incomplete. The disappearance of Tartaria is not merely a historical curiosity, it is a reminder that the past can be as carefully constructed as the present, and that truth sometimes waits beneath layers of earth, ink, and time. Tonight, as you listen and imagine, picture a civilization whose memory was nearly erased, whose knowledge was buried, and whose buildings, partially hidden, still rise as silent witnesses. Tartaria challenges us to question what we know, to seek what has been hidden, and to imagine the extraordinary possibilities of a past that refuses to be forgotten. As we continue our journey into the shadowed world of Tartaria, it is time to look at the modern perspective. The story of this lost civilization is not only confined to old maps, photographs, and architectural curiosities. Today, researchers, historians, and curious minds around the world are piecing together what might have been, studying evidence that has survived through centuries of suppression, rebuilding, and rewriting. These investigations offer tantalizing glimpses into a hidden history, a history that challenges our assumptions about the past. Modern researchers begin with the most tangible evidence: architecture. Buildings across Russia, Eastern Europe, and parts of Asia and the Americas share patterns and construction techniques that defy the historical timelines assigned to them. Massive domes, grand palaces, star-shaped forts, and intricate stonework appear across vast distances, often in places where societies were supposedly incapable of such feats. The question becomes unavoidable: who built them, and when? Old photographs, recently digitized and widely available, provide further clues. Many images show structures with lower floors partially buried, streets appearing raised, and unusual metal spires or antenna-like devices atop buildings. These features are often dismissed as quirks of design or misinterpretation, yet when viewed as a pattern, they suggest a technological sophistication that mainstream history struggles to explain. Could Tartaria have harnessed energy in ways lost to us? Were the cities of the civilization not only centers of administration and culture, but also hubs of technological innovation, transmitting power across vast regions? Maps also continue to intrigue. Researchers compare cartographic records over centuries and note a consistent disappearance of Tartaria. By the mid-19th century, the name vanishes from most maps, replaced by new nations and borders. Was this merely the progress of exploration and refinement of knowledge, or was there deliberate erasure at work? Some theorists propose that Tartaria's removal from maps was intentional, a way to conceal its technological and cultural achievements from the historical record. Further evidence lies in folklore, myths, and legends. Across continents, stories persist of sunken cities, lost empires, and sudden catastrophes that reshape the land. Could these tales be distorted memories of Tartaria's downfall? Some accounts speak of floods, wars, and disasters so massive they bury entire settlements. These stories are found in Siberia, Central Asia, Europe, and even the Americas, suggesting that whatever happened was global in scope. The implications of Tartaria's hidden history are profound. If a civilization with advanced architecture, technology, and knowledge once existed and was deliberately erased, it challenges the foundation of what we understand about human development. How did we come to believe that technological progress began only in the modern era? Could much of what we take for granted as new have roots in an older, lost world? These questions invite us to reconsider the narrative of progress and the sources of historical knowledge. Some researchers focus on possible energy systems. Towers and spires, once thought purely decorative, may have functioned as conduits for atmospheric electricity, distributing power across cities. Roads and bridges, often overbuilt for their apparent purpose, could reflect a civilization with mastery over materials and engineering. If true, Tartaria's knowledge would have represented a level of sophistication unmatched even in our modern age. The erasure of Tartaria also raises questions about who controls history. Throughout human existence, information has been power. By controlling the narrative of the past, authorities shape the understanding of the present and the future. If Tartaria's achievements were deliberately hidden, this may have been an early example of such control, removing evidence of free energy, advanced engineering, and societal organization to ensure that the knowledge remained inaccessible. Today, the fascination with Tartaria continues to grow. Scholars, amateur historians, and enthusiasts analyze old maps, photographs, and buildings, searching for patterns, anomalies, and clues. Online communities, archives, and digital reconstructions allow us to compare architecture across continents, revealing similarities that challenge conventional explanations. Every new discovery adds a piece to the puzzle, a reminder that history is often more complex than the simplified versions presented in textbooks. As we reflect on these mysteries tonight, imagine the vast scope of what has been hidden. Cities buried under mud, towers that once transmitted energy, streets engineered for precision, and knowledge almost entirely erased. Imagine a civilization that spanned continents, leaving traces that are still visible if we know where and how to look. Tartaria, in this light, is not merely a story of the past. It is a call to question, to explore, and to imagine what else might be hidden in the folds of history, waiting for those who dare to uncover it. And so, as we drift further into sleep, let us carry with us the image of a hidden world, one of architectural marvels, advanced technologies, and secrets carefully concealed over centuries. Tartaria may have vanished from maps and textbooks, but in photographs, ruins, and legends, it continues to whisper across time, inviting us to see the past not as it is told, but as it may truly have been. As we continue exploring the mysteries of Tartaria, a new perspective emerges: the global influence of this lost civilization. Even fragments of evidence suggest that Tartaria was not isolated, but connected to cultures and empires across the world. Roads, architecture, and legends point to interactions that challenge our understanding of historical timelines and technological development. From Siberia to Central Asia, from Eastern Europe to parts of North America, we find architectural patterns that are astonishingly similar. Grand domes, star-shaped forts, massive stone constructions, and intricate bridges appear across continents. The consistency of design, scale, and engineering suggests a shared knowledge system that could have transcended regional boundaries. Could Tartaria have been the hub of this network, spreading ideas, technology, and cultural practices far beyond its borders? Trade routes may have played a key role. Ancient pathways, later called the Silk Road, and other regional trade networks, connected distant civilizations. Caravans moved goods, ideas, and knowledge across thousands of miles. Could Tartaria have been the central node in this global network, facilitating not only commerce but also technological and cultural exchange? Perhaps this civilization was responsible for innovations we attribute to later European or Asian societies. Legends further support the idea of global influence. Myths of advanced cities, great floods, and lost empires appear on multiple continents. From Siberian folktales to European chronicles, from Native American stories to Asian accounts, we find echoes of a civilization so influential that it left traces in disparate cultures. These stories, while fragmented and often distorted, hint at a shared memory of a global power whose presence shaped history long before modern records began. Modern researchers have begun to trace these connections. Comparing architectural layouts, construction techniques, and design motifs across continents reveals patterns that defy conventional explanations. Star-shaped forts, for example, appear not only in Russia and Europe, but also in North America. Could these reflect a transfer of knowledge from a common source? Or were these innovations independently rediscovered by separate cultures? The consistency suggests the former, pointing to Tartaria as a central influence. Beyond architecture, Tartaria may have left its mark on technology. Towers and spires atop buildings, long thought decorative, could have functioned as energy distribution points. Bridges, roads, and aqueducts suggest a level of engineering mastery that exceeds what we traditionally associate with the regions in which they were found. Could Tartaria have had access to knowledge of free energy, atmospheric electricity, or advanced material science? If so, its influence may have extended not only through trade but also through the dissemination of technology. Even political structures show potential traces of Tartarian influence. Some historians note that early governance systems in Eurasia and the Americas display similarities in city planning, legal codes, and administrative hierarchies. Could these be remnants of practices originating from a global civilization that once connected distant regions under shared standards of organization? Perhaps the disappearance of Tartaria did not erase its influence entirely, but dispersed it into emerging cultures, subtly shaping the trajectory of human development. The erasure of Tartaria from maps and official histories adds a layer of complexity. Why hide a civilization of such scale and knowledge? Some theorists argue that emerging empires, fearing competition, deliberately rewrote history to consolidate power. By removing references to Tartaria, controlling the narrative, and attributing achievements to themselves, these powers could erase the legacy of a civilization that challenged the status quo. Photographs and architectural remnants continue to whisper these hidden connections. Buried floors, massive structures, and towers with unusual metallic features hint at a knowledge system that was both widespread and advanced. Roads engineered with precision, bridges constructed to endure centuries, and buildings of immense scale suggest a civilization that prioritized longevity, function, and energy. The global footprints of Tartaria, although obscured, persist across continents. As we ponder these connections, it becomes clear that Tartaria may not have been a regional empire but a global civilization, interacting with and influencing cultures far beyond its borders. Its knowledge, technology, and architecture, though partially hidden or lost, may have left a legacy still detectable today in patterns across the world. The story of Tartaria challenges us to see history differently. It asks us to consider that our current understanding of civilizations, technology, and cultural development may be incomplete. It invites us to look at old maps, photographs, and buildings not as isolated curiosities, but as remnants of a once-connected global network. And so, as the night deepens, we imagine a world where Tartaria's influence stretched across continents, shaping trade, architecture, and knowledge in ways that continue to echo through time. Its disappearance may have been deliberate, but its legacy endures, inviting us to question, to explore, and to imagine what might have been lost. As we move further into the hidden world of Tartaria, we turn our focus to one of the most fascinating aspects of this lost civilization: its technologies and innovations. While mainstream history often portrays the 18th and 19th centuries as relatively primitive, the evidence preserved in architecture, folklore, and rare photographs paints a radically different picture. Tartaria may have possessed knowledge and capabilities that would astonish us today. Let us begin with energy. Many buildings across the former territories of Tartaria feature spires, towers, and unusual metallic structures. On the surface, these are considered decorative, but numerous theorists suggest they were functional, part of a complex system for harnessing atmospheric electricity. The concept may seem speculative, yet the scale and consistency of these structures across continents hint at an organized, deliberate purpose. Imagine towers that not only decorated the skyline but also transmitted energy across cities, perhaps even across regions. This would imply a level of technological mastery entirely absent from conventional historical narratives. Bridges, roads, and aqueducts provide additional evidence. Many are overbuilt, far exceeding the needs of the populations they served. Foundations of stone and brick show precision in construction that defies the tools supposedly available at the time. In some locations, roads are perfectly straight over miles, while bridges endure centuries of weight and weather without apparent reinforcement. Such feats suggest engineering knowledge and techniques far ahead of the era, preserved in the enduring structures that remain today. Star-shaped forts, another hallmark of Tartarian architecture, reveal an understanding of geometry and design beyond mere military strategy. The alignment of walls, angles, and towers may have had secondary functions, perhaps related to energy distribution, astronomical observation, or societal organization. These patterns repeat across Russia, Europe, and the Americas, indicating not independent invention but a shared knowledge system that connected distant regions. Photographs from the 19th century reveal yet more anomalies. Buildings appear half-buried, windows and doors lead into walls of soil, and entire lower levels seem hidden from view. Steps lead down into what should have been basements but now open into dirt. Such designs may have been functional, protecting energy conduits, preserving machinery, or even shielding knowledge from destruction. Whatever the purpose, the consistency across distant locations cannot be explained solely by urban development or natural erosion. Tartaria may also have mastered forms of transportation and infrastructure that are now lost. Roads wide enough for large vehicles, bridges capable of handling tremendous weight, and urban layouts suggest a society that moved goods, people, and energy efficiently across vast distances. Could the civilization have used advanced vehicles, powered by energy systems now forgotten, connecting cities in a network that predated our modern understanding of logistics? Consider the possibility of communication technologies. Some spires and towers resemble early forms of antennas or signaling devices. Could Tartaria have transmitted messages, power, or information across regions without physical infrastructure as we know it? Such speculation gains weight when we examine the uniformity of construction and alignment in buildings across continents. If these were functional, they represent a technological network whose scope is hard to imagine today. Even in daily life, Tartaria's innovations may have been profound. Water systems, urban planning, and public buildings show attention to both utility and aesthetics. Cities appear to have been designed for longevity, comfort, and efficiency. Public spaces, roads, and markets reveal advanced understanding of social organization, integrating function and beauty in a way that modern urban planners still study and admire. Some theorists propose that Tartaria's technology was deliberately erased following catastrophes like the mud flood. Evidence of buried floors, blocked windows, and altered streets may represent attempts to hide knowledge and protect or suppress advanced systems. Over time, what remained was attributed to later societies, while the origins of these achievements were forgotten or deliberately concealed. The implications of these innovations are staggering. If Tartaria truly had free energy systems, advanced engineering, and city-wide infrastructure that exceeded contemporary understanding, it suggests a civilization far more advanced than commonly believed. Its disappearance and erasure raise profound questions about how history is recorded and who controls the narrative. As we reflect tonight, picture these cities in their full glory. Towers transmitting energy, roads stretching perfectly for miles, bridges carrying immense loads, and public buildings designed to last centuries. Imagine a civilization where technology, architecture, and society were integrated seamlessly, and consider the possibilities lost to time. Tartaria may no longer appear on maps, but its innovations, hidden and forgotten, continue to inspire and intrigue those who dare to seek the truth. As we continue through the hidden world of Tartaria, we arrive at an aspect often overlooked, its cultural and mystical influence. Beyond architecture, technology, and infrastructure, Tartaria appears to have left traces of a rich spiritual and cultural life. Folklore, symbols, and legends hint at a civilization that understood not only material science but also the mysteries of human consciousness, the cosmos, and the interconnectedness of life. Many Tartarian structures display geometric patterns, sacred symbols, and alignment with celestial bodies. Domes, spires, and towers are often oriented according to astronomical phenomena, suggesting a knowledge of the stars that goes beyond navigation. Could Tartaria have used these alignments for practical purposes, such as agriculture or energy distribution, or for spiritual observances? Perhaps the architecture itself was intended as a bridge between the physical and metaphysical worlds, integrating human activity with the rhythms of nature and the cosmos. Legends from Siberia, Central Asia, and parts of Eastern Europe speak of mystics, sages, and priests who guided society. Some tales describe them as possessing knowledge of natural energies, celestial cycles, and even healing practices that modern science struggles to explain. These stories often emphasize balance, harmony, and a careful use of resources, reflecting a worldview in which technology and spirituality coexisted rather than conflicted. Cultural artifacts, symbols carved into stone, and architectural motifs suggest a society deeply connected to symbolism. Repeated patterns, intricate facades, and hidden chambers in buildings hint at teachings encoded in stone, perhaps intended to convey knowledge across generations or preserve secrets from those uninitiated. Could Tartaria have encoded scientific, mathematical, or philosophical knowledge in its architecture, accessible only to those who understood the system? Even the layout of cities hints at a sophisticated understanding of culture and human psychology. Public spaces, plazas, and gardens are often designed for communal use, reflecting an awareness of social interaction and human behavior. Bridges and roads connect not just locations but communities, fostering trade, communication, and cultural exchange. Tartaria appears to have cultivated a society where innovation, community, and spirituality were integrated, rather than separated. Folklore also suggests that Tartaria had a profound influence on later cultures. Many myths of lost cities, sudden floods, and hidden knowledge may originate from collective memories of this civilization. Stories of sunken temples, buried libraries, or vanished palaces appear across continents, hinting at a shared human experience. Could these legends be faint echoes of events that reshaped the world, from the mud floods to deliberate erasure of knowledge? Music, art, and symbolic carvings also survive, sometimes misattributed or overlooked. Patterns in stonework, reliefs, and mosaics may contain encoded messages, mathematical principles, or astronomical observations. Temples, towers, and civic buildings often incorporate motifs that suggest both aesthetic beauty and functional design. Tartaria may have understood the integration of art, science, and spirituality, creating a culture where knowledge was both practical and symbolic. The mystical aspects of Tartaria extend even to its disappearance. The sudden erasure from maps and history may have been accompanied by intentional concealment of spiritual knowledge. By burying cities, altering streets, and reconstructing narratives, those who survived could obscure not only the technological but also the cultural and spiritual achievements of the civilization. What remains are fragments, tales, symbols, patterns in architecture, and the awe-inspiring presence of buildings that defy explanation. Even today, enthusiasts and researchers report strange anomalies in old cities, hidden rooms, blocked passageways, and unexplained alignments. Could these be remnants of Tartaria's mystical knowledge, encoded in architecture for protection, teaching, or energy purposes? While we may never fully understand these designs, they continue to spark curiosity and imagination, encouraging us to consider the possibility that human history is far richer and more complex than we are taught. As we drift deeper into the story tonight, imagine a civilization where spirituality, science, and culture were intertwined. Picture cities built not only for survival or commerce but also to align with cosmic rhythms, harness energy, and preserve wisdom. Imagine a society that valued knowledge, aesthetics, and community in equal measure, and that, even in its disappearance, continues to whisper through time. Tartaria, in its mystical and cultural dimensions, challenges us to think differently about the past. It asks us to see history as layered, complex, and often deliberately obscured. It invites us to explore the hidden connections between technology, society, and consciousness, and to consider that what we know may only be a shadow of what once existed. As we enter the penultimate stages of exploring Tartaria, it is time to consider one of the most controversial yet compelling aspects of this lost civilization: the deliberate suppression and rewriting of history. While evidence of architecture, technology, and culture suggests a thriving empire, mainstream history seems determined to erase it from collective memory. Researchers, both professional and amateur, have begun to uncover patterns suggesting that Tartaria's disappearance may have been less a natural event and more a coordinated effort to control knowledge and narrative. One of the first questions researchers ask is, who benefits from erasing a civilization from history? Throughout human history, information has been power. Knowledge of advanced engineering, free energy, and urban planning could have given Tartaria's successors or competitors an unprecedented advantage. By rewriting history and concealing evidence, emerging nations could assert control over technology, resources, and populations. If Tartaria had achieved technological feats centuries ahead of its time, its suppression would have been essential for maintaining hierarchical structures and consolidating authority. Modern analysis of old maps reveals striking patterns. Tartaria is clearly marked in maps from the 16th and 17th centuries, yet by the mid-19th century, the name vanishes almost entirely. Borders are redrawn, regions are renamed, and vast swaths of the empire appear absorbed into new countries. Was this a result of political expansion and natural evolution of geography, or a deliberate effort to remove a civilization from memory? Researchers who study these cartographic changes note that the erasure is too consistent across regions to be accidental, suggesting intentional alteration. Photographic evidence adds further intrigue. Many 19th-century photographs show enormous buildings partially buried, with doors, windows, and even entire floors hidden beneath earth or mud. Mainstream historians attribute this to urban redevelopment or natural accumulation of soil, but the sheer uniformity of these anomalies across multiple continents raises questions. Could these buried floors be a result of a massive global catastrophe, such as the mud flood theorists describe? Or were they deliberately obscured to hide advanced technology embedded in the buildings themselves? Some theorists propose that Tartaria's energy systems were the primary reason for suppression. Towers, spires, and metallic devices atop buildings are found consistently in photographs and surviving structures. While often dismissed as decoration, these may have been functional components of an advanced energy network, capable of harnessing atmospheric electricity or providing free energy. If true, control over such knowledge would have been extremely valuable. Suppressing Tartaria's legacy would ensure that this technology did not fall into the hands of potential competitors or the general population. Folklore and myths support these theories. Across Europe, Asia, and the Americas, stories exist of cities that disappeared beneath mud or water, of sudden floods, and of knowledge deliberately hidden. While such tales are often considered exaggerations, taken together they suggest a collective memory of a civilization destroyed or erased for reasons beyond natural disaster. Even the repetition of symbols, architectural motifs, and city layouts in widely separated regions implies a coordinated global culture whose traces have been intentionally obscured. Modern researchers also examine inconsistencies in historical accounts. Official histories often describe the same cities as being newly built in the 18th century, despite evidence of much older construction. Dates are altered, events rewritten, and builders misattributed. This creates a confusing narrative in which achievements of Tartaria are credited to later rulers, engineers, or empires. The patterns suggest an organized effort to rewrite history, concealing the contributions of a civilization whose knowledge might have challenged prevailing structures of power. Additionally, anomalies in urban planning and architecture hint at deliberate concealment of technological knowledge. Buried floors, blocked windows, and unused towers may have served as protective measures, hiding energy systems, machinery, or archives. Bridges, roads, and fortifications overbuilt for their apparent function could have concealed unknown capabilities or methods. Tartaria may have designed its cities with foresight, anticipating the possibility that future generations would attempt to erase its legacy. Global implications of this suppression are profound. If Tartaria existed with advanced energy, engineering, and societal organization, the loss of this knowledge delayed technological and scientific development worldwide. Our current understanding of industrial progress may be incomplete, built on fragments of a civilization deliberately hidden. Every new discovery, maps, photographs, architectural analysis, raises further questions about what else has been lost. As we reflect on these theories, it becomes clear that Tartaria's story is more than historical curiosity. It is a cautionary tale about the power of controlling knowledge, about the fragility of human memory, and about the possibility that much of our understanding of the past has been shaped not by facts alone but by deliberate intervention. Researchers who continue to study Tartaria confront not only architectural anomalies but also the broader implications of what history chooses to remember and what it deliberately forgets. And so, as we approach the final stages of our journey, imagine a civilization whose knowledge was too advanced, whose cities were too grand, and whose technologies were too powerful to remain in the hands of the people. A civilization buried, hidden, and rewritten into obscurity, leaving behind only stones, photographs, and fragments of stories to hint at its true magnitude. Tartaria, though suppressed, continues to challenge our understanding, urging us to question what has been deliberately concealed and to imagine a past far richer than we are taught. As we reach the final stage of our journey through the mysterious world of Tartaria, it is time to reflect on what remains, what has been lost, and what continues to intrigue modern explorers of history. Tartaria, a civilization hidden from conventional narratives, challenges the way we understand human progress, technology, culture, and the very fabric of history itself. Its legacy is not just in the remnants of stone and metal, but in the enduring questions it leaves behind, questions that urge us to reconsider what we know, what has been suppressed, and what may yet be rediscovered. The physical traces of Tartaria are undeniable, yet often overlooked. Across Russia, Central Asia, Eastern Europe, and even parts of the Americas, enormous structures stand as silent witnesses. Massive domes rise above streets now covered in modern development, towers stretch toward the sky, and fortresses with precise geometric layouts still endure. In many cases, lower floors are partially buried, entrances are blocked, and architectural anomalies abound. These features are not random. They suggest careful design, advanced engineering, and possibly technologies that have no parallel in conventional history. Modern photographs, maps, and documents provide further evidence. Images from the 19th century reveal spires, metallic towers, and unusual devices atop buildings, features dismissed as decorative but potentially functional. Roads and bridges, often overbuilt, indicate an understanding of engineering and logistics far beyond the supposed capabilities of the era. Entire neighborhoods, cities, and regions appear constructed with knowledge that challenges mainstream historical timelines. The patterns are consistent, widespread, and suggest a civilization that was both global in reach and sophisticated in its technological achievements. Legends and folklore complement this material evidence. Tales of sunken cities, sudden floods, and lost knowledge appear in Siberia, Central Asia, Europe, and North America. Myths of sages, mystics, and advanced scholars hint at cultural and spiritual dimensions, suggesting that Tartaria was not merely a political or economic entity but a civilization that integrated science, spirituality, and art. These stories, passed down through generations, provide subtle yet persistent clues about a world whose memory has been intentionally obscured. Perhaps most striking is the possibility that Tartaria possessed energy technologies far beyond what we understand today. Towers and spires, carefully positioned, may have harnessed atmospheric electricity or distributed energy across cities. Bridges, roads, and public buildings, engineered for durability and efficiency, could have concealed energy systems or mechanisms now lost. If this was the case, Tartaria was not only an architectural marvel but also a hub of technological innovation, a civilization whose potential for energy independence and scientific advancement would have dwarfed contemporary societies. The disappearance of Tartaria from history raises profound questions. Maps, documents, and textbooks show a sudden vanishing of the civilization, replaced by new nations, borders, and rulers. Was this disappearance natural, a result of cataclysmic events such as floods or earthquakes? Or was it deliberate, an erasure designed to control knowledge, power, and resources? The consistency of anomalies across continents, combined with historical rewriting, suggests that suppression played a significant role. Knowledge of advanced engineering, energy systems, and societal organization may have been deliberately concealed to protect emerging empires and maintain control over human development. Cultural and mystical dimensions further enrich the story. Architectural patterns, symbols, and alignments hint at a civilization deeply attuned to the cosmos and human consciousness. Temples, civic buildings, and public spaces often reflect astronomical precision, sacred geometry, and symbolic design. Folklore suggests that mystics, sages, and spiritual leaders guided Tartarian society, blending knowledge of energy, astronomy, and human psychology with governance, urban planning, and technology. This integration of science, culture, and spirituality creates a vision of a civilization far ahead of its time, holistic in its approach to life and society. Despite suppression, the legacy of Tartaria persists. Researchers and enthusiasts continue to analyze maps, photographs, and ruins, revealing anomalies and patterns that defy conventional explanations. Online communities and digital archives allow global collaboration, enabling the reconstruction of a civilization once erased from collective memory. Each discovery, an overbuilt bridge, a buried floor, a star-shaped fort, adds to a growing picture of a civilization that may have influenced regions far beyond its borders. The potential global footprint of Tartaria challenges the assumption that technological and cultural progress is linear, localized, or purely modern. The enduring mystery of Tartaria lies not only in its material remnants, but also in the questions it raises. What other knowledge has been suppressed? How many technologies, practices, or insights were lost to time or deliberately hidden? Could understanding Tartaria change our perception of human history, revealing a civilization capable of feats that modern society struggles to replicate? These questions remain unanswered, yet their persistence keeps the story alive. As we imagine the lost cities of Tartaria, picture towers transmitting energy silently through the air, streets and bridges engineered for efficiency, and public spaces designed to harmonize communities with natural and cosmic rhythms. Imagine sages walking alongside engineers and architects, blending science, spirituality, and governance into daily life. Envision a civilization that could have reshaped our understanding of progress, power, and possibility. A civilization that, though hidden, continues to whisper its presence across centuries. The story of Tartaria is ultimately a reminder that history is not fixed, that human memory is fragile, and that knowledge can be lost, suppressed, or deliberately concealed. Yet, even in absence, the civilization speaks to us through stone, photograph, legend, and imagination. Its ruins, patterns, and mysteries invite exploration, curiosity, and a reconsideration of what we think we know about the past. Tonight, as you listen and imagine, let the vision of Tartaria guide your thoughts. A civilization of wonder, knowledge, and mystery, remembered and forgotten, whose legacy continues to challenge our understanding of the world. Its towers still rise in photographs, its roads still stretch across continents, and its stories continue to beckon the curious. Tartaria is not simply lost. It is waiting for those who are willing to see beyond the surface, question the narrative, and uncover the extraordinary truth hidden beneath the layers of history.